Once again, good morning and welcome to all the participants and today's resource persons, Anil Raut sir. Uh, the No Series 3.0 is organized by Postgraduate Teaching Department of English, and there is the third session by Anil P. Raut, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Mahatma Gandhi College, Armory, and on the topic of overview of major periods in English literature. So I welcome behalf of PGPD English to Raut sir and hand over this session to our facilitator, Nisha Hippo and Pradeep Shinde. Thank you, sir.
Hello everyone, a warm and graceful morning to all. Welcome to the today's third session here, organized by Postgraduate Teaching Department of English, Gondwana University, Gadchiroli. I am Manisha Hilko, student of the Gondwana University, Gadchiroli, MA second year. It gives me an immense pleasure to deliver the hosting for the event of Noise Series 3.0. Special welcome to our today's speaker, Honorable Mr. Anil Raut sir, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Mahatma Gandhi College, Armory. Raut sir has research was done in pursuing PhD under the guidance of Professor Dharmapal Phule, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Armory. Raut sir has done PhD topic is constructing socio-culture ethos in Anita Nair's novels. Along with that, sir has given paper presentations in the National Virtual Conference on 10th March 2023, and his paper also has been published 02 in an international peer-reviewed open access journal. I'm going to tell you brief informations about the subject and overview of major period in English literature so that our student will get proper information about it. The subject will be useful in their life in the future. So without wasting much time, let us move to the main topic. Raut sir, we should start the topic. Thank you.
Thank you. So let's start. Today's topic for this lecture series is an overview of major periods in English literature. So I would like to introduce you with this topic. You know that English literature is the richest literature in the world, and it has a vitality, variety, and continuity also. As we know or learn from the degree or PG in PG college, that literature is the reflection of society. It means the mirror of society. And the various changes which have come about in the English society from the earliest to the modern age have left their impression or stamp on English literature. And when we study English literature or history of English literature, we find that it has passed through certain ages or certain phases having marked characteristics. These phases may be termed as ages or periods, which are named either after the central literary figure or the important rulers of England, or movement, or termed by literary historian. So it is essential, it is important to keep in our mind in order to follow their distinctive characteristics during the various periods of development in English literature. So before I move towards the topic, I would like to tell you the most important thing, that how to study and understand English literature. How to study and understand English literature is most essential for the students like you, UG or PG students. What you should do to study or understand English literature? First of all, you should get familiar with the major periods of English literature, such as Old English period, Middle English period, Renaissance period, Reformation period, 18th Restoration period, 18th century, and the Romantic period, Victorian period, and 20th century period. It means modern period. Means you should have to familiar with these major periods of English literature. Then read a broad range of literature from each period, whether it is poetry or prose or non-fictional writing or non-fictional writing. You should have to read a broad range of literature from each period, whether it is poetry or prose or non-fictional literature, and you should try to understand the context and the themes of each piece of literature. For example, consider how the literature reflects the values and the cultural norms of the period in which it has been written. Then analyze the literary techniques used in each piece of literature. This includes figurative language or symbolism. And you should consider the various interpretations and meanings of each piece of literature. Then, as a student, you should research the authors of the literature. You should know the life and work and the influence of the authors. And the most important thing to understand or study English literature is you should know the historical context, socio-political or economic conditions of that period. How historical context helps to understand any literary text or political economic conditions helps to understand any literary text. See here, the historical context helps, means it is an essential ingredient to understanding any literary work. By looking at the time period, the author, and the events of the time, readers can gain insight into the motivations and experiences of the characters. It also provides important clues to the themes and messages of the work, as well as its relevance to the current day. For example, a reader of classic novel set in the late 80s can gain a better understanding of the characters' motivations and experiences by looking at the events of the time, such as Industrial Revolution, the rise of the middle class, and the changing roles of women in society. By looking at the historical context, readers also can better understand the underlying meaning of the work and even draws the parallels between the past and the present. For example, the novel The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald is set in the Jazz Age in 20s. By understanding the historical context of the time period, readers can gain insight into the issues of class and materialism. Readers can gain insight into the issues of class and materialism that are explored in the novel. Jazz Age was an era of tremendous economic and social change in US. It was an era of tremendous economic and social change in the US as the country shifted from an agrarian society to an urban or industrial one. This historical context helps readers to understand why the novel's characters are so obsessed with the wealth and status, as well as why the narrator Nick Carraway is so critical of them. Such historical context, if we know or study the historical context, it helps us to understand the author, the time period, and the events of the time. And we can gain a deeper understanding of the work, its theme, and the relevance to the current day. Then see how socio-political and economic conditions also helps to understand any literary text, just like the historical context. As we have seen that historical context helps us to understand any literary text. Similarly, socio-political and economic conditions also provide context and insight into how the author was affected by the events of their time. For example, the novel 1984 by George Orwell was written during the Cold War, and its theme of government control and surveillance and social repression, its theme of government control, surveillance, and social repression can be seen as a reflection of the political climate at that time. Similarly, the economic conditions of the Great Depression influenced the writing of the John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath, which told the story of a family forced to leave their home and search for work during the period of hardship. So, understanding socio-political and economic conditions of the period can thus help the reader to better understand a literary work and themes and message it conveys. So, move towards our main topic, major periods in English literature. To study the major periods in English literature is most essential for the literary students to understand literary text. See, the first one, Middle English period. Middle English period was the Middle English period is Middle English language was the result of the modification of Anglo-Saxon dialect spoken after the Norman conquest of 1066. Around 50s, London dialect used by the Chaucer, which gained a standard literary language. And the Chaucer's most famous work, the prologue to the Canterbury Tales and Troilus and Cressidas, which rank among the greatest work of English literature, laid the basis for the modern English. And its contemporaries includes John Grover, who wrote Confessio Amantis, and William Langland's religious satire, Piers Plowman. The 15th century also witnessed the flowering of the poetic talent in Scotland by poets called Scottish Chaucerian, and included King James I of England, Gavin Douglas, and Robert Henderson. The English prose of the period was used in romance and travel literature, and in the Wycliffe's translation of the Bible. The 15th century was also the age of medieval drama, miracles and morality plays, and the popular lyrics and the ballads. The late Middle English literature, stimulated by the situation of English for French literature in courtly literature, included ballads, cyclic religious dramas, and romances. Means in the Middle English period, we have seen that the Chaucer London dialect used by the Chaucer became the standard literary language. became the standard literary language. Now move on to the Elizabethan age. This age was a time of great discoveries and development. With the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588, the period was marked by commercial expansion and the growth of nationalist feelings referred to as the Renaissance. It is one of the great period of English literature, especially in drama, with remarkable writers like Shakespeare, Marlowe, Spencer, Johnson, and Bacon. So Elizabethan age is the most important one. Later on, see the Jacobean age, a rich period, means it was a rich period of English literature with many of the themes and patterns carried over from the preceding Elizabethan age. This age is marked by a later flowering of Elizabethan writings at the beginning and by a growth of cynicism and realism towards the end. During the Jacobean age, William Shakespeare wrote his greatest tragedies. Ben Jonson's, John Donne, John Fletcher, Francis Bacon were at their height of creative powers. And in 1611, the King James Bible was published. Though the literature of this period was rich, but it was darkly questioning and preoccupied by the problems of the evils. Why? Because in the 60s, there was a religious and a political turmoil, struggle between the Protestants and the Catholic, or monarchy and the parliament. That's why this period was regarded as darkly questioning and preoccupied by the problems of evil. During this period, another feature of the drama at this time was the development of mask. Comedy was the best represented by the acid satire of Ben Jonson. There was two poetic streams, Donne and the metaphysical poets on one side, and the second was represented by the lucid and graceful verse of Ben Jonson. And the most famous prose writers of this age were Francis Bacon and Robert Burton, who displayed their flexibility in style. Then see the Caroline age. Caroline literature was decadent carryover from the previous ages and melancholy characterized the works of metaphysical poets. Drama was decadent, romanticism was in decline, classicism was advancing, and scientific temper was growing. The period includes the later metaphysical poets, the early works of Milton, and the Cavalier poets. The flamboyant cynicism of the Cavalier poetry was distinctive enough to be considered as the typical of this age. The period was dominated by the poets like Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, and Sir John Suckling. Then see the Commonwealth period. The Parliament during this period, a Parliament was led by Oliver Cromwell, and the Puritan banned the theatrical performance in 1642. So dramatic writing was seized. And prose, however, flourished in the non-fictional writing of the Thomas Browne, Jeremy Taylor, and Isaac Walton. And Milton was involved in the writing of political pamphlets in support of his Puritans. Thomas Hobbes published the most political and philosophical study, Leviathan, in 1651. The latter metaphysicals like Wagham and Marvell were the poets of this period. Then move towards to the Restoration. Charles II came to the throne in 1660 and monarchy was restored. This 40 years period is characterized by the wit and control of Dryden's poetry. The Keter, published after the end of the Puritans' ban of 1642. George Etheridge, William Congreve, Dryden developed the distinctive comedy of manners that is known as Restoration comedy. Otway and other playwrights developed the even more distinctive form of tragedy called heroic drama. And the notable writers of this period: Samuel Butler, religious writer John Bunyan, and the philosopher John Locke. Then see the Augustan age, it means the reign of Emperor Augustus. And the many distinguished Roman writers enjoyed a period of peace and prosperity, which resulted in a fertile literary output. Notably by Virgil, Horace, and Ovid. And in imitation of the brilliant literary period, English poets and the writers of the first half of the 18th century have also called the Augustans, which includes Edison, Steele, Pope, Swift, Dryden, and Goldsmith. All imitated the style and the subject matter of this age: decorum, balance, elegant, wit, patriotism, and concern for society are the characteristics of the Augustan age. It can be described as the period of highest purity and refinement in national literature. Then see the age of reason, a term used by jointly for Restoration and Augustan age, covering the final decade of the 17th century and the first half of the 18th century. The ideal of reason dominated intellectual activity in the arts. Its literature is characterized by balanced judgment, lack of excess, decorum, restraint, and it reflected classical qualities. Among the important English writers of the period were Dryden, Edison, Johnson, Pope, Swift, and Steele. Then we see the neoclassicism. The period of English literature, this period of English literature lasted from 1660 until about 18. Dryden, Pope, Goldsmith flourished in poetry, and in prose, Swift, Edison, Johnson, and Gibbon were impressive. The novels of the period lacked classical model, and thus the novelists are excluded from the list of neoclassical writers. And exceptions to the above might be made for Henry Fielding, who held many views in common with the neoclassicists. Means there was Henry Fielding was the exception. Now we come to the Romantic period. In English literary history, this period covers the time from 1789 to 1832. When Scott died, the passage of Reform Bills signaled the political preoccupations of the Victorian era. The writers of this period are many and varied, but all tend to share the same common features which were a part of literary atmosphere called Romanticism. Novelists of the period includes Sir Walter Scott and Jane Austen. Essays like Lamb, Hazlitt, Dickens, Hunt are notable for the contributions to the fast developing literary magazine. The publication of the Wordsworth and Coleridge's lyrical ballads is an important landmark of the age. There were two generations of romantic poets. Many of the first generation, which include Blake, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Southey. Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
So, move towards the Victorian period. This is a time of the reign of Queen Victoria, lasting from 1837 to 1901. These 6 decades are changes in society and outlook and a huge variety of literary figures. Among the many writers who flourished during the Victorian reign were the novelists like Dickens, Thackeray, George Eliot, Meredith, Hardy, Samuel Beckett, Samuel Butler, the poets Tennyson, Browning, Arnold, and the most prominent essays were Carlyle, Ruskin, and Peter. The Edwardian period during the First World War, it leads to the vast changes in the fabric of British society. The Edwardian period was rich in novelists. Conrad, Kipling, Galsworthy, Wells, and Henry James. In the theatre Barry, Galsworthy and playwrights of the Celtic Renaissance such as Lady Gregory, Synge, and Shaw produced notable materials. In poetry, Hardy, Keats, and Kipling were the chief writers of the Edwardian period. Now we move towards the modernism. The First World War is generally considered to be a catalyst that initiated the modern periods in literature. The First World War is generally considered to be the catalyst that initiated the modern period in literature. The most typical modernist feature of the 20th century literature is its experimental quality, which is thought to be a response to the conditions of living in a modernized world. Radical technical innovations took place in all three of the major genres in novel, Proust, Kafka, Lawrence, Joyce, and Faulkner, all broke away from the broadly realist 19th century tradition. In poetry, we found Eliot, Yeats, and W.C. Williams. And in theatre, Strindberg, Pirandello, Brecht, Beckett are all celebrated for their breaking of old forms and conventions. And the last one is the postmodernism. This tendency has dominated English literature since 1945, favoring clarity, irony, skepticism, and non-nonsense tone, as evident in works of poets such as Philip Larkin, Donald Davy, and John Wayne. There has been an adverse reaction against aesthetic and philosophical radicalism in favor of reassertions of the traditional modes of expression. The power of English drama in 1950s took the form of kitchen sink drama, which deals with the working class life and social conflict. Means in the postmodern period, we saw the kitchen sink drama in the 1950s, which deals with the working class life and social conflict. So, in the light of this above discussion, we come to the conclusion that English literature has successfully explored the social and philosophical, psychological realities of human condition across various phases of its development. Till date, English literature is characterized by a continuing interest in experimental techniques and assimilation of other disciplines and literature. The modern writers continue to reformulate, reinvent, and produce remarkable work, continuously adding to the diverse and phenomenal pool of the English literature. So the topic is over. Thank you. Thank you for the organizing committee for giving me a chance to appear before the students. So if you have any queries, then you can ask me.
Thank you, sir. Review of a major period in English literature has guided us very well and helpful. What is literature? How to study literature and understand English literature told information about this. Today we have got a lot of information which will truly help us in our education. So thank you, sir. Next session is a question and answer. So anyone want to ask a question? You can ask him, please.
Hello.
Manisha, read some questions from chat box.
Yes, sir. Sir, sorry, sir.
Okay.
Just wait. Okay.
Don't wait.
Sir, is a sir, Mike. Sir,
Sir.
there's some 2 or 3 questions regarding your topics. The first question from Sapna Mishra.
Okay.
Sir, why first half of 18th century called as the Augustan age?
What, sir? Why? The first
Why
hour?
first half 18th century called as the Augustan age? Then I read the all questions. Just you click on the chat box. There is some lots of questions from the side of student. What was the difference between German style, uh, postmodernism period, and other periods of English literature? And there is last one question from Manisha. What is the utility of literature today?
Okay. The first one is why?
Why first half of 18th century called as Augustan age? Then
because
called as the Augustan age.
Augustan age. The first half of the 18th century called the Augustan age because during this period, the many literary figures imitate brilliantly the classical literature. And that's why they are known as the Augustans.
There's another one is question. What was the difference between German style in postmodern period and other periods of English literature?
The style of
This question is related with German style, writing style.
writing style.
Different between to the postmodern period and other period of English literature.
Other period of English literature. In the postmodern era, as we are the student who experience this postmodern era, in this postmodern era, the writers freely follow the techniques, whatever may be they like, they used to describe their thoughts and feelings in this literature. But when we see or when we look back into the literature, we saw that there was specific rules, traditions, and regulations to write the specific literature. But in a postmodern era, we cannot find such, we can't find, or we didn't find such types of traditions or restrictions in the postmodern era. Means in this era, each and every writer got the freedom to write whatever they want.
Okay, sir. Then another one is question from Manisha Hilko. What is the utility of literature today?
The utility of literature, if we saw or if we study the literature, if you are the students of the literature, then you should know the utility of the literature. The literature should be used in your day-to-day life also, but it has a great use in obtaining the jobs in the field of translation, or in the field of research, in the field of writings also. There are so many avenues available for the students of literature.
Thank you, sir. From the participant side, if you have any questions related with this topic, mention in chat box or switch on your mic and directly ask to the outside.
Okay, sir.
Okay. I think question answer session is over, and now we are moving towards to the last stage of session. OTA plans. I call Pradeep Shende for proposed OTA plans.
Good afternoon to each one of you present here. I am Pradeep Shinde, MA first year, PGTD of English, Gondwana University, Gadchiroli. We have reached to end of today's third session of NOS Series 3.0 2033. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to our chairperson of program, Dr. Joshi sir, organized a very beautiful and effective session for us. I am extremely thankful to today's chief guest and speaker, Mr. Anil Rao sir, Mahatma Gandhi College, Armory, for giving us a very thoughtful and enlightening guidance and overview of major period in English literature. Mr. Anil Rao sir have a very good information about major period in English literature. How to study, understand English literature and beautiful information of periods. I would like to extend gratitude to PGTD of English faculty, to the PGTD of English faculty organizing team of NOS Series 3.0, Dr. Vaibhav Masram sir, Dr. Shilpa Athawade ma'am, Dr. Pramod Javre sir, for wonderful arrangement. I would like to thank all the participants of today's third session for attending and your cooperation and being major part to make session successful. I would like also thanks to Manisha Hirko for amazing hosting today's session. I would also thank everyone to giving me this opportunity of vote of thanks. Last of everyone for your participation to make this no a series session successful, and here I declare to the session is over. Thank you everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Vaibhav sir.
Thank you, sir. Just request to all the participants to switch on your camera for a group photo with notice speaker.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for the organizing committee for giving me such a chance to appear before the students. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Sir, just wait for 1 minute.
Okay.